Christina Siders can't talk. Her son can't talk. Elizabeth and Gary Sr. still can, and they're choosing not to. Read that with me one more time because it is the whole story in one line. Christina Siders cannot talk. Her son Gary Jr. cannot talk. Elizabeth and Gary Sr. still can, and they are choosing not to. If you have followed this case, you already know the shape of it. 4 adults, 1 family, 1 house on Omer Street, 16 children. That much is old news. What is new, what changed in the last 48 hours, is how each of those 4 adults is now behaving inside the courtroom. And I want to walk you through it because the pattern is telling us something important about what happens next. Come sit with me. This one is going to take some patience. But by the end, you are going to be able to read a co-defendant case like a book you have read 100 times. Let me start with what a co-defendant case is, in case anyone is new here. A co-defendant case is when more than one person is charged in the same crime or the same set of crimes in the same court at the same time. In the Siders case, 4 adults from the same household are all facing charges. That makes them co-defendants. Now here is the thing about co-defendants. They almost never stay on the same team. I want you to picture 4 people in a lifeboat. The boat is sinking. They know it is sinking. And they all have to decide individually whether to keep bailing water together or grab a plank and paddle for shore on their own. That is what being a co-defendant is like. Every person is watching the water rise, and every person is trying to guess when their teammates are going to jump. That is what we are watching right now in the Siders case. The water is rising, some are still bailing, some are already paddling. Let me walk you through who is where. Christina Siders. She is the one who had a gag order signed for her on July 23rd. Her lawyers went to the judge and said, please keep our client from being talked about in the press. The judge agreed. So now her whole side of the case is behind a curtain. Christina Siders cannot talk. Her lawyers cannot talk. Her staff cannot talk. Her experts cannot talk. That is a defensive move. That is a person who is worried. That is a person whose lawyers looked at what the state might have and said, we need silence to survive this. Silence is a shield. Gary Siders Jr. He had his own gag order signed earlier, back on July 14th. His lawyer, Lee Roberts, has been aggressive with paperwork behind the scenes, but silent in front of cameras. He is the one facing the misdemeanor public indecency case that unlocked this whole story. He is also the most likely person to face the biggest new charges when the grand jury meets. So his silence is not surprising. His silence is survival mode. 2 down. Both silent, both behind gag orders. Now the interesting 2, Elizabeth Siders. She has no gag order. She has not asked for one. Her attorney is still talking to reporters. Not a lot, not every day. But when the press pushes, the attorney pushes back. And the pushback is always the same shape. It is always saying, my client is not what you think she is. She is not pure evil. Do not paint her with the same brush as the others. That is not silence. That is the opposite of silence. That is a public relations campaign happening in slow motion right in front of us, while the other 2 defendants are sitting behind closed courthouse doors. And Gary Siders Sr., also no gag order, but also not talking. He is on GPS monitoring. His bond was modified. He was in the hospital for a while, and now he is home. And he has not said a word publicly through his attorneys. Not one word. So we have 2 very different kinds of silence going on. Christina and Gary Jr. are silent because the court ordered them to be. Elizabeth is talking through her lawyer and choosing what to say very carefully. Gary Sr. is choosing pure silence without any court order forcing him to. 4 defendants, 4 different tactics, all under the same roof, all inside the same family, all facing similar charges, but 4 completely different playbooks. This is the fracture. This is the moment I want you to hold on to, because here is what usually happens in co-defendant cases. And by usually, I mean about 80 to 90% of the time in cases like this one. One defendant flips first. One defendant, usually the one who is watching the others most carefully, decides that survival is not going to happen by sticking together. Survival is going to happen by cooperating with the state. That defendant walks into the prosecutor's office with their lawyer and they say, we will tell you what really happened in exchange for something, a reduced charge, a lower sentence, a better prison. Sometimes, in rare cases, no prison at all. That is called flipping, or turning state's evidence, or cooperating. The words are all a little different, but the deal is the same. One person gives up the others in exchange for a softer landing. Now look back at the 4 defendants and tell me which one is most likely to flip first. The 2 who are behind gag orders, probably not. If you were about to flip, you would want to keep your voice open, not closed. You would want your lawyer able to speak to reporters, to control the narrative, to soften how you look to the public in case a jury is watching later. Gag orders lock that door. That leaves Elizabeth and Gary Sr. Between those two, one is quietly running a public relations campaign, saying she is not what people think she is. The other is completely silent, home on GPS, not moving, not talking, waiting. The one who talks is often the one who is trying to survive publicly. The one who stays silent is often the one who is trying to survive privately through a plea deal. So if I had to guess, and this is only a guess, I would watch Gary Sr. very closely in the next few weeks. Because absolute silence, when your co-defendants have gag orders they had to fight for, is the shape of a man who does not need a court order to know when to stop talking. That is the shape of a man whose lawyers have already told him, we are quietly working something out. Do not say anything. Do not need to. That does not make him guilty. That does not make him innocent. That just means he is playing the game the way the smartest defendants play it, quietly. Elizabeth is playing a different game. Elizabeth wants a jury to like her. Elizabeth wants the public not to hate her. Elizabeth wants her name separated from the rest of the family in the news. And that means she is preparing to fight, not to plead. She is preparing to walk into a courtroom and say, I am not the one you are looking for. Two paths, two survival strategies, same last name. Now, I want to say something honest with you from one adult to another. This is the part where a lot of true crime channels get it wrong. They want to make every defendant look the same. They want to say they are all monsters, they all did it, throw the book at all of them. That makes for a viral video. But it is not always how the truth works. In a household with 4 adults and 16 children, some of the adults may have been active participants. Some may have been quiet participants. Some may have been passive. Some may have been victims themselves, controlled by another adult. That happens in family cases more often than the public wants to believe. The courts have to sort that out. And the way they sort it out is by giving each defendant a chance to tell their story separately. That is why co-defendants get separate lawyers. That is why the state offers deals to some and not to others. That is why we see fractures like this one this week, right in front of us. I am not telling you which siders is guilty and which one is not. I do not know. Nobody outside that courtroom knows yet. But I am telling you that the fracture we are seeing this weekend is real. And it is the kind of fracture that decides the whole case. Now let me give you a checklist. Because when you know what to watch for, you can follow this case with the eyes of a lawyer instead of the eyes of a spectator. Number 1, watch for a bond modification. If Gary Sr.'s bond suddenly changes, if his GPS is removed, if he is allowed to travel, that is a sign a deal is happening. Bond changes are often the first paper sign of cooperation. Number 2, watch for Elizabeth's attorney to get louder, not quieter. If she is planning to fight, her lawyer will start doing more interviews, not fewer. If her lawyer starts doing fewer interviews, that means the strategy shifted and she is probably heading toward a plea too. Number 3, watch for a sealed motion filed on behalf of just one defendant. Sealed motions in co-defendant cases are often cooperation agreements. If one of the 4 files a sealed motion, that is the flip. Number 4, watch the docket for a hearing that is set and then quietly canceled. Canceled hearings can mean a defendant just entered a plea and the trial for them is over. If that happens, the state's whole case against the remaining defendants gets stronger overnight. Those are the 4 things I am watching. You can watch them too. And I want you to know something. Watching a criminal case like this is not creepy. It is not entertainment. It is civics. It is how a democracy works. Cases like this one are how the public learns what the rules are. They are how we learn what happens when families become unsafe. They are how we learn what protects children and what fails them. So paying attention is not morbid. Paying attention is one of the most useful things a citizen can do, especially now, because the Siders case is going to shape child protection law in Ohio for years. Whichever way it goes, whoever pleads, whoever fights, whatever the sentences look like at the end. This case is going to be studied by prosecutors and defenders and judges and social workers for a long time, because 16 children is not a normal number. And what a court does with a normal number is very different from what a court does with a number that shocks the conscience. All right, let me bring it back down to a soft landing. 2 Siders defendants can still talk. Both are choosing not to in different ways. Elizabeth is choosing carefully edited speech. Gary Sr. is choosing pure silence. Watch them both, because one of them is going to flip. And when they do, everything you thought about this case is going to shift in a single afternoon. Watch who talks and who doesn't. That's how you know who's about to flip. Thank you for sitting with me. Thank you for reading the paperwork with me. Thank you for not letting this case fade into the noise of everything else that is happening in the news. If you know someone who has been following the Siders case, share this with them. Not because you agree with everything I said, but because they deserve to have their eyes open when the next domino falls. I will see you in the next update. Take care of yourself, take care of the people you love, and keep watching. One last thing, and then I will let you go. There is a hard truth about family cases like this one. When 4 people from the same household are charged together, they do not just lose their freedom, they lose each other. The trust that used to hold them together, whatever kind of trust it was, gets broken by the pressure of the courtroom. Lawyers pull them in different directions. Prosecutors offer deals to some and not to others. And by the end, the family that lived in that house on Omer Street will never be the same family again. That is not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is. It is the natural result of what happens when a private world becomes a public case. For the 16 children who came out of that house alive, that fracture is probably a mercy. Because a family that stayed unified might have been a family that never told the whole truth. A fractured family, on the other hand, is a family where somebody eventually tells everything. So watch the fracture. Not with joy, not with anger, just with clear eyes, because the fracture is how the story finally comes out. I will keep watching with you, filing by filing, motion by motion, until every last piece of this case is in the sunlight. Take care. See you in the next one.